For the record, all board members are here with the exception of Mr. Fleming. We do constitute a quorum and can conduct business on behalf of the district. As required by Board Policy BBD Local, let the minutes reflect that all board members have exceeded the continuing education training hours required for the current reporting period. We will now proceed with agenda item number 2, discussion with TASB consultant regarding superintendent search process. Butch, you're on.
What we're going to do is that we're going to go into closed session. We will work on the applicants and get that worked out, and then we will come back into open, and then we will go into how the process, the first round process works, and go over your questions and things like that. That's pretty much how we need to run it tonight.
Okay. Thank you for being here tonight, Butch. And remind me again your name, sir? William, yeah, both of y'all. We will begin our discussion with your expectations for this next step in our superintendent search process. Board members, we proceed, before we proceed with the next agenda item, do you have any questions for Mr. Felkner before we do this? Hearing none, seeing none. Our next agenda item is number 3, closed meeting as authorized under Texas Government Code, but including but not limited to Section 551.074, personnel matters. The board will meet in a closed meeting to discuss application for superintendent position. Audience members are welcome to remain in the boardroom as board members recess and move into the board room 150, the executive conference room, for deliberations. The time is now 6:03. This meeting is recessed. Everybody hear that? It's the only thing I ever get to beat. We are back on the record now in open session, having returned from closed session. The time is now 9:29 p.m. Board members, our next agenda item is number 4, approve the number of applicants to be interviewed, and this item is marked for action. Is there a motion to be made at this time?
I move that we approve the number of applicants to be interviewed, specifically 7.
I have a motion from Ms. Valenzuela. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second from Mr. Shackman. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor, raise your hand. That vote is unanimous. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of our agenda and we are adjourned. Oh, never mind, ladies and gentlemen, we're not adjourned. We have a closing remarks from TASB. Yeah.
Okay, the first round process and how it works. We will need to know where this is going to take place, so we will have the candidates report there, okay? The times have already been decided upon, and the dates have been decided upon. When the candidates come in, Mr. Matthews will welcome the candidate, and then at that point, we'll have you as board introduce yourselves individually. So we'll start with Nancy, work our way around, and you'll just tell them briefly who you are, what you do, and then the next one, right on down the line. Once you start, the clock starts ticking at that point, and it's a 90-minute interview. It's not 95 minutes, it's 90 minutes, okay? After you finish introducing yourself, then, and your script, Mr. Matthews, is on page 4. Once you've introduced yourselves, then you can remind the board that it's a 90-minute interview, and then at that point, you can ask the candidate to share a little information about him or herself that maybe is on or not on their resume, and they'll give you information. I would encourage you to write down that information because they will give you information that you cannot legally ask them. So they might tell you about more of their family, their church background, some other things that you can't ask, but you can take very good notes on at that point. After that candidate has finished with their sharing, then Mr. Matthews is going to tell the candidate, at this time the board is going to ask you a set of questions, not going to give the number because we don't want the candidate mentally counting where are we. And we'll start with Nancy, and Nancy will ask her first question, and right on down the road, you'll ask your first question. Back to number 2, back to number 3. So we have all of your questions asked at that point. When you receive your folder of questions, you're going to have, there'll be Nancy's name and a blank space. And then Richard's questions, blank space, and right on down where everybody, so you can take notes on everybody's question that's being asked, okay? So you'll see all the board members' questions. And then you can write the responses of the candidate in the blank area. Then after you finish with all your questions, then Mr. Matthews is going to ask the candidate, do you have any questions of us? And at that point, Mr. Matthews, you can respond to the question, or you can ask a board member, is there a board member that would like to respond to that question? But remember, the clock is still running at this point, okay? And this is not an opportunity of dialogue, back and forth, extensions, and things like that. It's a response to the question, and then we go to the next question, okay? Then the last question that Mr. Matthews is going to ask the candidate, what salary range would you be anticipating if you came here as superintendent? And they're going to give you a salary range, okay? Now, if they give you $350,000 to $400,000, please don't fall out of your chair or grab your heart or, go into hysterics. Just write the numbers down and then let it go, all right? And that ends the interview at that point. Then Mr. Matthews will thank them for coming, and he will say that Mr. Felkner will be in contact with you. And that's the end of the interview, all right? I would recommend that you might have a timekeeper, and if the timekeeper sees that you're running long on this interview, and you're like on question 15 or 16, and I would at the appropriate time, if the timekeeper would say, Mr. President, board members, we have 10 minutes remaining in this interview. And then you just keep going until that 9 minutes is up, but you reserve that last minute for your salary question. And then that will be it, okay? If the candidate, for example, says, Tara, I need you to explain your question. Tara's going to say, I can repeat the question, but I cannot explain the question. The explanation is a stall tactic by the candidate trying to figure out what you're really wanting to hear, okay? All we need you to do is repeat the question only, okay? And that ends the interview. It is a very structured, very formatted interview. There's no deviations. You ask the questions that are there, and because we want you to be able to compare apples to apples in this round. Second thing is, we don't want you to fall in love on the first round. That's why we have a second round, okay? We're not going to fall in love with one of the candidates on this round, because if you've fallen in love with them on this round, you will still have the same affection for them on the second round, okay? That's why we have a second round, because many times you see different characteristics on the second round than you do the first round, okay? And that's why we want, if that's how you feel, we want you to bring that person back for a second round to see, all right? And then I'll be back with you, I think, on the 30th, and we will talk about the second round. Mr. Smith and I are not present at any of these interviews, and it's just you and the candidate, okay? And the reason that is that we don't want the candidate calling us and saying, how did I do? What did you think? What did you hear? If we're not there, we can honestly say we don't know. So that's why we want you to be able to, do this on your own. Speaking of interview questions, if you have them prepared, I'll take them tonight. If you do not have them prepared and you want to respond to the ones that are in the book, there's 70-something sample interview questions in the book. You can certainly email those to me if you'd prefer. And my email address is Butch, B-U-T-C-H, all lowercase, B-U-T-C-H, dot Felkner, F-E-L-K-N-E-R, at TASB.org, O-R-G. And I'd like to have those by noon on Thursday, if possible.
At TASB.org.
And if you get into difficulty, say, gosh, I don't have the right email address, Angela has my email address. She can get it to you. Or if you lose it, if you email them to Angela and she will email them to me, that will be fine. But I prefer you send them directly to me. That's my preference. And that's how the first round works, okay? So what I will need from you is where the location of the interviews will be so I can have the candidates report that. You don't have to give that to me tonight. If it's something you want to discuss, come up with. I heard one hotel mentioned, and that's fine. You have it already?
Yeah, she's got it.
Oh, perfect. Great. It's already set. Perfect. Good. Then we've got that accomplished. Mr. Matthews, that's all I have. Mr. Smith, you have anything? Okay. Then we're good. Any questions that I can answer for you?
Board members, questions, Randy?
How do we / you communicate with, because we have a candidate pool, and we will narrow that pool down? What kind of, does it need to come from us? What happens? How do we respond to people? We got your things, good luck, best wishes.
We do that.
You
So
mean
you
the
ha-
ones that were not selected?
the ones that were not
Oh,
selected.
Yeah, we will do that. Once all the candidates that you've selected for interview accept, then we send an email out to all the ones that were
Okay.
not selected, and we thank them for applying, but you were not selected to be interviewed.
Okay.
And that's how we handle that. Now, that's an email blast that we send out. I know it's just the way it is, but we can't call all 40, 50, whatever number it is, and try to get in touch with them. When we get into this round, then we make personal phone calls on the ones that you select to go forward, the ones that you don't select, we'll make personal calls then.
Okay.
Good question. Anything else?
Guess not.
Well, I don't think but each one of you will have a sheet with their question for each candidate so that you can make notes on the first round. When someone's asking a question, you'll have a sheet, we'll produce a form for you so that you know, you can take your notes on it, and then when you get ready to deliberate about it, you can go back to that, and you can also use it on the second round to follow up on the answer.
You'll have a manila folder with 7 copies inside that folder, and you'll just write the name of the candidate that you're interviewing. Once all the candidates have selected their dates and times, you will receive an email from us to your emails that you ask for your information to be sent to. It'll come to that email, and it'll identify who's coming when. So that way you'll know.
Do you recommend us taking like big legal pads to take notes on, or is that gonna be provided? Or do we just do all that?
I would do it right there on that
Right
sheet.
there on that sheet.
That
Okay.
way, it can stay inside that folder. And once you
Okay.
have your folder, you're to keep that folder throughout, okay? Because it's not it's not subject to open records request because you're still discussing about active personnel, potential personnel.
All right. Any other questions, folks? I appreciate y'all, and I appreciate these people too.
I definitely
This
appreciate
is-
the work that you've done, very much. You've done a very good job. Very, very much.
All righty. As I was about to say a while ago, we have reached the end of our agenda, and we are adjourned at 9:42. Thank you very much.